When you start to understand that past, present and future all exist in this present moment of now, and that consciousness is integral to this, then you begin to access information and can be given information from the non-linear, non-physical dimensions. And that information is not restricted by this level. And so we've got to try, if we can, to get beyond this linear mind, beyond the mind, and connect with our infinite essential nature, which is infinite consciousness and awareness. And if we can do that, we're accessing a whole new field or fields of awareness and information.
Welcome to the Biba frequency, home to conversations with consciousness. I'm Biba, your host. Hey folks, this is Biba, your host to Conversations with Consciousness. Today I spoke with Robert Goodwin. Robert Goodwin is a trance medium, and he has been communicating with a spirit in another dimension for over 50 years. This spirit being calls himself White Feather, and he was actually alive once on the earth, and now he is in higher dimensions, and he's facilitating himself through Robert's abilities, through his skills, and they have formed an incredible relationship to bring light and wisdom and healing and help into this place at this time. My interview with Robert was about his life as a trance medium, how that developed, how it has changed his life, what is his views on life as a medium, as a man, knowing that we have a reservoir of assistance on the other side, and knowing that the other side is really this side, and that there are no sides and we're all one. Robert is a very beautiful human being, and he's a man of great humility and skill. He's also a teacher of trance mediumship for anybody who's looking to develop their skills. And so sit back and enjoy the show. And I just want to give a shout out to Elaine Thorpe, another trance medium who is channeling an incredible man called Jonathan from the 18th or 19th century. And they're doing the same work. She put me in touch with Robert. And so with that, I give her much love and much thanks, as I do to Robert. God bless and enjoy the show. Hey, Rob, thanks so much for joining us here on Conversations with Consciousness.
Thank you for inviting me, Biba. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you here. I did the interview with Elaine Thorpe, a trance medium, who actually suggested several times that I contact you and invite you on. And when I discovered who you are and what you're doing, I was thrilled that you said, yeah, you'd hop on board and talk to us.
Yeah, I'm all about communicating with people. I mean, I know Elaine. I've never met Elaine, actually. I've spoken to her on Zoom. I'm a big sort of advocate of mediumship, trance mediumship. Yeah, I mean, she's a lovely lady, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Yes, so thank you to Elaine. She's beautiful. So, Rob, you are a trance medium, and you've been communicating with White Feather, which is a being on the other side, for 5 decades. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm giving my age away here. Yeah, I started really when, I had no aspirations to be a trance medium. I sort of began my journey, if you want to call it that, when I was about 17. Just to give you a little bit of background, I'm an only child. I came from a loving family, loving parents. I always felt, strangely enough, Biba, that I'd come here to this place we call Earth for a reason, but I had no idea what it was, other than a desire, if you like, to help people and to serve in some way. I had no notion of any abilities or gifts. But I was always interested in, things otherworldly, I suppose you could call it. But beyond that, nothing at all. But when I was around 17, just to give a little bit more background, I was in my early life very much of a hypochondriac. Now, if you've ever suffered from hypochondria or know anyone that has, that can be very debilitating mentally. not so much physically. But I used to worry. I always say to people, I used to worry for England. I would worry about this. I'd got this symptom or that symptom, this illness or that illness, and I would often manifest the supposed symptoms of whatever it is that would sort of taken my focus. So I had years and years of battling with that. And when I was around 17, through a series of events, which I won't go into unless you want me to, events conspired, shall I put it that way, to draw me into a situation where I could receive healing, spiritual healing. And I won't elaborate too much, but other than to say that I received spiritual healing from a wonderful guy that was Canadian. He was actually in the Canadian Mounted Police, and he was visiting on police business, but he'd actually come over to do that. And while he was here, he was visiting a few people that he wanted to give healing to that had already contacted him, one of which was my grandmother, who I was very close to. So I was sort of coerced into going round to my grandmother's, somewhat against my will, because my thoughts at the time were, if this guy, he's got all this power and he can see, he can give healing, he can see into the future and all this, he's probably going to look at me and say, well, you haven't got long to live, That was my mindset, sad as it was. But I went round anyway, met the guy, lovely chap. I mean, I'm 6'2". He was taller than me, big guy, but a very gentle manner with him. And he said, I've just come to give you some healing, Rob. Just sit in the chair and, let me put my hands on your shoulders, which he did. And Biba, it was the most phenomenal experience. I've never had one like it to this day. I came out of my body. I felt as though my legs were, I felt as though I was horizontal. My legs were coming up and I felt as though I was floating. The power that came through him, through his hands, was absolutely phenomenal. It was like a warm, enveloping heat. And that feeling stayed with me for several days after that session. In fact, I remember going back to work. I worked in the printing industry. I was an apprentice at the time, and saying to some of the guys what had happened. And of course, they teased me remorselessly, did this guy have his hands on your shoulders, Rob? And, all spooky and all this, So I took a right pounding for that. But I knew what I'd experienced. I knew what I felt. This guy, whose name was Colin Turner, by the way, went back to Canada, and I wrote to him. And he wrote back after about 3 weeks and said, thanks for staying in contact, Rob. He said, we've had a meeting out here in a circle in Canada. And he said, we've inquired about you. And he said, you are a medium. Did you know you were a medium? And I said, I had no idea I was a medium. And he said, well, you are a medium and you should develop this. And that's, from that point, I started going to a local spiritualist church. I thought to develop healing. I thought I was a healer, a healing medium. That's what interested me. And week after week, Biba, I would get different messages from different mediums on the platform, all of them saying, you've got work to do. You've come here for a reason. And things started to fall in place. And after several months of going to the spiritualist church, a guy came up from the back of the audience after the service had finished, and he said, I've been listening to your messages. He said, I'd like you to join the development circle that we run here if you're interested, and we'll take it from there. And that's what I did, thinking that I would develop healing, but it didn't work out that way. And the trance started really to develop from that point onwards. So that's how it begun for me.
That's so divine, though. It's the whole path up to that gentleman saying we have a circle. That doesn't happen a lot, you know. Sometimes you got to fight to find a circle and everything these days.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I don't want to bore your listeners with too much detail, but I will just say that there's more to it really, because my grandmother, who the healer came to visit, had been writing to Harry Edwards, the famous healer. I don't know if you've heard of Harry Edwards, a spiritual healer. You know, he was a global sort of phenomenon, really, in terms of healing. She used to write to him every week because she had a long-term illness. So that was a sort of a little sign of something, you know, otherworldly that was surrounding me. My mother worked in a shoe shop, and she happened to mention to her boss that her mother, my grandmother, was writing to Harry Edwards. He said, "Oh, that's interesting." He said, "My son's a healer. Not my son. My brother is a healer, and his brother was the guy that came over from Canada." And when this link was made, he said, "Look, if your mother wants to write to Harry Edwards, that's fine. But my brother is in the Canadian mountains. He's also a healer, and he's coming over to the UK." So you see the links there, and it was all sort of pieces being put in place. I won't say it was all for my benefit, but looking at it from my perspective, you know, sort of things were put into place to get me to that point where I went round to my grandmother's on that Saturday afternoon and had healing that opened the door for me, drew me into the spiritualist movement, and set me on the course to development. Now, none of that was by chance, not in my understanding. It was all, you know, contrived and worked on behind the scenes by our spirit friends to get me into that point, you know.
Strategically, actually, like the shoe shop, the person in the shoe shop, the boss, the brother, you, the whole thing is just, it's beautiful, isn't it?
It's beautiful, you know. I mean, you talk about coincidence. I prefer to use the term synchronicity. I don't believe in coincidences. I think, you know, there's a lot of synchronicity, and certainly throughout, you probably find this as well throughout your life. There are synchronicities. Things happen. People come into your life and go out of your life and seem to be there at the right time. You know, there's a saying, isn't it? You know, certainly that I've found to be true. You don't have to knock. Well, I've certainly not had to stand and knock on the door. The door's been opened for me. Now, is that, you know, fortune? You know, I don't think I'm better or more privileged than anyone, but I think that when spirit want to open doors to get things moving, they can do that. And that's what I believe happens, you know.
Well, it clearly happened to you.
It did, yeah. There was another thing as well, if time permits, I'll share with you as well. Just after that whole sort of thing happened, I'd still got this interest in healing, and the trance side of it hadn't really sort of started to develop in the circle. And I was about 17 at the time, a bit naive, you know, hadn't really been away from home without my parents, you know, not like some of the kids today, you know. And I saw this little advert in a newspaper, and it's advertised a healing weekend with the Kent healers down in Hastings.
I love it.
The Kent healers in Hastings at a hotel. So I said to my mum and dad, I said, I'd love to go to that, you know. And my mum, it didn't. My mum and dad were always supportive, by the way, but this was a new thing to them. In one way, it was a new thing. And my mum said, "Okay, healing. And I know there's, you know, you're interested, but it's a long way to go. You know, you'll have to go on the train and on your own. You know, are you going to be okay with this?" And I said, "Yeah, I just feel I've got to go." So I booked the train tickets, booked the hotel, went down on a Friday afternoon. got to the hotel and met some of these people. Biba, I felt like a fish out of water because they all knew each other. It was like a little clique of friends that were all part of the Kent Healers and all knew each other, and they were all doing this wonderful work. And he was me from the West Midlands in England, going down into their sort of neck of the woods, unbeknown to them. And it's like, I remember one guy saying to me, "Well, what healing have you done then, Robert?" And I said, "Well, none really, you know." And I got these strange looks as if to say, "Well, what are you doing here then?" You know. And I felt really alone. All right. There were some wonderful speakers on this event. On the evening, they all came down for dinner, wearing bow ties, you know, and evening suits. I got my jumper, you know, so that further alienated me. No one told me about dress codes, you know. Hardly anyone spoke to me. And I thought, I don't know if I'm going to get through this weekend. You know, how am I going to get through this weekend? So about 10 o'clock, I went to bed in a little room on the front. I don't know if you've ever been to Hastings, but it's an old-fashioned seaside town, you know. I was in a room. There was a bed, a wardrobe, a sink in the corner, and a chair. That was it. Drew the curtains, heavy line curtains. Now, bear in mind, this was I think it was in November, so it was sort of, you know, start of winter. I went to sleep, feeling pretty sorry for myself. Middle of the night, I was awoken, and there was a light at the end of the bed, like the size of a football, which was floating in midair above the bed. I wasn't frightened. I wasn't scared. I didn't know what it was. If I'd have known then what I know now, I would have spoken to it because I believe it was a spirit helper. But I just turned the light on and I couldn't see it. Got out, went to the loo, got back in bed, switched the lamp off, and it was still there. For some reason, I felt calmer and I turned over and went to sleep. In the morning, everything had changed. People were speaking to me. I felt as though I fitted in and whatever. I felt happy. Everything was changed. Went to the first lecture, which was by a lady called Margaret Wilson, famous healer in a day, waiting for people to come into the room. There was probably about 50 or 60 people on this weekend. And a little lady over the far side was looking at me, staring at me, and I thought, what are you looking at? And she was just staring at me. You know when somebody stares at you and it unsettles you. Eventually, she plucked up the courage to come and sit next to me because no one was sitting next to me. And she rummaged in her handbag and, "I've got to give you this. Got to give you this little piece of paper," and I opened it up. And I found out that she was a medium that did automatic writing. And she said, "I was woken up in the middle of the night," she said, "and I had to write this and give it to you." And it was a beautiful message to say that I was here for a reason. I'd got work to do. Again, the same message from Spirit. And it was signed Brother John, who I had no idea who Brother John was. And she said, I was woken up by Spirit in the night. I had to do this. She said, I had to do this. Now, I've later sort of worked back that the guide that I saw, that light in my room, I think let me know that they were there, then went round to her room because I found out she was in the next room afterwards, went round to her room, woke her up and said, "Look, you've got to give this message to that young man in the next room the following," and she wrote it, automatic writing. So that was a sort of a wow experience for me. It still stands high, in my memory of the things I've experienced in all the years since. So, you talk about synchronicity and Spirit opening doors, that was a wow moment, you know.
Yeah, it's magnificent. I'm really moved by that story. And what moves me is there's a 17-year-old guy who knows he has a calling. He thinks it's healing, but he's not sure. And it's the strength and the courage that it takes to go into those type of places where, people are in the know and there might be healers, and you just know there's something in you that needs to be expressed. And you're up
Yeah.
against the ego of others going, and what do you do? It's like, well, I tell you what I do. I've no idea what I do, but the spirit knows what it's doing. Like, you have to. And but what I loved so much was, number one, you went, regardless of all the obstacles. You went. You put your sweater on at dinner, which is just adorable, right? And you're such an outcast. But then when the spirit came to you and he tried to deliver the message, he's not getting this. Have to wake your one up. Write this down to tell him he needs to do this. And I just feel like, I remember I went to the Arthur Findlay College, and even in my own path, going to different things, when you're sensitive to the spirit, it makes you a very sensitive person, right?
Yeah.
And so you're able to really feel what others are saying to you. Like, he may say, "What healing do you do?" But you, as almost like, what qualifications have you got to be here? But you see,
Yeah.
it's really just, we need to just allow everybody to just be, without having to say, by the way, I'm a healer, and I've been doing this a lot longer than you. And so there's some people who have such gifts, but they're so timid that they have to feel safe. You know what I mean? Like you felt safe
Absolutely.
enough when that woman came to you and gave you that message. How did that feel?
Well, I was overwhelmed for a moment, but I felt reassured. I felt vindicated, I suppose, and justified in being there.
Yeah.
And, this was at the time, the following morning, the Saturday morning, after a pretty awful arrival and evening on Friday. And it was part of this transformation in that all my fears and concerns seemed to be evaporating. And this message was sort of, I guess, like the icing on the cake almost. And it sort of indicated in my mind that I was here for a reason. And whatever people said and whatever qualifications they'd got, I was every bit as justified as them in being there. And from that moment, I thought, yeah, I made the right choice coming here, and I'm going to make the most of it. And the rest of the weekend just was just a dream, really. It was the lectures were good. I sat down at dinner and was chatting to everybody. I made some good friends. I had some further messages. I found out who Brother John was, independently of a medium, by the way. She gave me a message, and I hadn't mentioned this note from her, so she didn't know. So that was a further confirmation. And it was a transformative, whole weekend turned out to be a transformative event, really, in my life, from which I went back to my development circle in the local church, and I felt more confident, to be honest with you. And that's when the trance that's when White Feathers started to come in and connect with me. Yeah.
Can you walk us through that, when he came in, started to connect to me, from your perspective as a young man? When a spirit guy comes in, how did he come in and how did he communicate with you? I know it's a while ago.
Yeah.
But you do not.
Yeah. No, it's clear. It's as clear as anything, Biba. I mean, the circle I was very privileged. It was a very good, well-run circle by a medium who himself was a trance medium. And just to set the scene for you, we used to sit in an old air raid shelter at the back of a small spiritualist church in Birmingham, which was called Earlsbury Gardens. I don't think it's there now. The old air raid shelter hadn't been used since the war. It was full of rubbish, and the medium, Arthur Phelps was the guy, cleared it out, put some carpet in, some lights, some heaters, got some spare chairs, and he made it really, really nice. And I always say to people, whenever you used to go in there, it was always on a Friday evening, the circle. I think it was 7:30 or 7 o'clock on a Friday evening. You could cut the atmosphere with a knife, the energy. It was palpable. So I knew it was something special. And there was a guy whose name escapes me I sat next to in the circle, an older guy. He was about 70, I would guess. And early on, he had a wonderful little girl from Spirit speak through him. She gave her name as Maisie, spoke in this delightful child, feminine accent. Yeah, it was wonderful what came through. But he was a little bit concerned about, whether he was always wondered whether he was cheating himself and cheating others, whether people would say that it was his own voice, that he was making this child's voice, which he wasn't, and he knew he wasn't. But he was such a kind, sort of shy chap. As far as I know, he never demonstrated his gift, in public. But it did sort of, it was such a wonderful experience. And I thought, well, this is trance mediumship. I've never seen this before, never witnessed it before. It didn't sort of suggest to me that that's what I was supposed to do, and I didn't try and copy it or anything like that. I just carried on sitting in the circle to develop whatever came. What came were two things. One was the start of the trance mediumship, and also I was developing clairvoyance and clairaudience at the same time. So I got these two streams of development taking place. As regarding the trance side of it, I would guess over a period of about 7 or 8 months, I started going deeper in the meditation in the circle. We used to sit for an hour, a little bit of background music, and I felt as though I was going deeper. And over time, this built to the point where I started developing this urge to speak, which was a little bit worrying at the time, because I thought, I'm quite I'm not an extrovert, put it that way. I've learned to communicate and connect with people, but certainly at that time I was more introverted than extrovert. And I thought, is this really what it's about? It built and built to the point where one week I could contain it no longer, and I stood up in the circle, and this voice came through me. Now, it wasn't White Feather. It was a farmer. He didn't identify himself, didn't give me a name, but he was a farmer. And he talked a little bit philosophically about sowing seeds and reaping harvests, philosophical, teaching. Only for a couple of minutes. The circle leader thanked him. I sat down, relieved in many ways, but somewhat elated that this sort of door had been opened for me. Following on from that, White Feather started to link with me. And it wasn't long before he was speaking through me. He didn't give me his name. I didn't have his identity at all. I just knew it was an evolved soul in spirit. And he started speaking, and it became the familiar pattern of the circle, that every week he would come through, usually after about 10 or 15 minutes, give a little address, and then, the rest of the circle would continue after that. And this just got stronger and stronger and deeper, the teachings that came through. And it wasn't until, I would say, about 2 years of sitting in the circle that I remember being at home in my bedroom, just linking up on my own. And I saw him quite clearly. He showed me his face. He gave me the name White Feather, which I took with a little bit of a pinch of salt, because I've learned, through experience, you have to have these things verified. And I asked him, I said, can you verify your identity through someone else, through another medium? And it was about 3 or 4 weeks later that he did that. So I knew the name was correct, And it just built from there. And I sat in that circle for probably 6.5 years, regularly speaking. I only missed in that time maybe 3 or 4 Fridays. I was dedicated and determined. I didn't know where it was going to lead to. I had no aspirations to work on the platform or to work in public. The clairvoyance was developing nicely as well. And it reached the point where Arthur Phelps said to me one week, Bob, he used to call me Bob, you're going to work on the platform. Won't be next Sunday, he said, it'll be in a couple of weeks, but you've got to work on the platform. And he said, I'll come on the platform with you. And I wish this hole could have opened up and I'd have fallen into it, because I was almost in a sweat. I can't work in public. I'm not good enough and all this, But I did. And White Feather came through in the address. I don't know if you've ever been to a spiritualist service, but it tends to follow a certain format, doesn't it? Opening prayer, address, clairvoyance, closing prayer, interspersed by hymns. And he came through and gave a talk, and then I gave the clairvoyance, and it was just like a dream, really. Everything worked well, And from then it just sort of, it spread, really. And the word of mouth more than anything. No internet in those days. No Facebook.
No need for it.
No need for it. Yeah.
Internet of your mind. And how did you feel as a person in your own life with this happening to you? Like, what were you thinking about in regards to life and the meaning of life and the other realm?
Well, I think as a natural consequence of the teachings that were coming, and also that my own thoughts, and study. I used to read philosophy and read about other mediums, the silver birch and white eagle, the usual ones, red cloud, and some of the things they came through, and my understanding was deepening, and it's always been for me. How can I put it? Some people get excited by, music or by watching football. I love football as well. I'm a big Aston Villa fan, so I know what that emotion brings. But I really, to this day, get excited by philosophy when I come into something new, a new understanding, a new insight that perhaps I hadn't considered before. I think, wow, and I get this warm feeling, that I'm supposed to know this and I want to know it. I've always had this want. I want to know. I want to understand. I've always had that feeling, and this was starting to deepen with me, and it's stayed with me throughout my life. I just get excited when I come into a new development. Even if it's a scientific development, the discovery of quantum physics, which wasn't around really when I started developing in the 1970s, it wasn't around. That's been an exciting development. The fact that consciousness plays its part, in collapsing the waveform into the particle, and I think there's been a great shift in human understanding towards the understanding and awareness of what consciousness is, and that's been a wonderful journey to be on, and it's still ongoing now, and I just love that. I love it.
I love it as well. I'm like you. It's that's what ignites me. I get ignited by the truth, and I get ignited by learning and discovering and remembering the whole. It's unending learning, unending information. It's
unending,
and that's what excites me. It excites me that there's no start or finish. It's just there, just knock on that
Yeah.
door or that door or that door, and how far you're willing to open this is how far it's willing to show you what's available. And with your connection, do you when you go into your own space in your with not in a circle but just in your own private time in the closet of your mind, do you get to talk to him mind to mind? How is your communication with your guide?
Yeah. I mean, that does happen. Sometimes he will connect with me when I'm least expecting it. I mean, I've had I call them downloads. You know, it's when my mind is in the right sort of setting or I'm in the right frame of mind. I think he will give me something to think about, and I've had information given to me when I've been out walking, even when I've been driving. Believe it or not, and you don't have to be in a trance state, or I don't, to receive that information. You know, I find with White Feather, he will give me things that seed further talks that he's going to give. He will give me things to think about. And then later he will bring those out. He will use those in a communication. I'll give an example. I remember seeing a medium called not Estelle Roberts. No, what was her name? Can't remember her name now. She was a medium of Ramadan. Anyway, her name escapes me. At the Arthur Findlay College. And she was talking about how Ramadan, her guide, used to put markers into her auric field. And I thought, well, what do you mean, markers? You know. So I asked White Feather about it. And he said, have you ever read a book? I said, yeah, of course, you know. He said, do you turn the page down when, you know, the corner of the page, when you've got as far as you want and you want to put it aside for the next day? Or do you put a bookmark in it? And I said, well, yeah, of course, so I can pick up from where I left off. And he said, well, we do this as well. And he said, this is what this lady, whose name escapes me, meant by markers in the auric field. Because he said, we put information into your subconscious or your unconscious mind that we later want to use. And we blend this with your own understanding, your own knowledge. And then we can bring this out as philosophy in our own way, using our words and our deeper understanding. And you have to understand, which I'm sure you do, that the medium cannot be excluded in the process. If guides could come and talk to us, you know, and appear to us all, there wouldn't be any need for mediums. Mediums would be, you know, defunct.
Yeah.
But they have to work through a medium. So there's a little bit of coloration always from the mind of the medium. But as White Feather said, if we can achieve 95% of us, 5% of you, we can live with that. You know, we'll live with that as long as we're getting the majority of the information through. But to come back to your point, yeah, I mean, I can sit and I can talk to them. I can pose a question, and very often I'll get the answer back. Not always immediately, but it might be, you know, it might be the following day or a couple of days, and it'll just drop into my mind, and then I can think on it further, you know. So we've got a good link. And I don't always have to sit in formal meditation. You know, I don't have to sort of go and I'm going to sit now for an hour and link up. You know, that does happen on occasions, but it's just knowing that they're there and they take what opportunities arise for them to sort of just drop in. And yeah, I'll just drop that into Rob's mind, or I'll just put that there, you know, and then they'll revisit it when they need to. I don't know if that's the same for all mediums, but that's my experience.
But you've been doing this so long. So, you know, I would imagine that you've evolved from having to go into deep to feel that, to know that, to sense that, to clear the space. But now you're so used to how that feels when they show up, when that link, it's a feeling. I get a feeling.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess I feel good.
I mean, you feel good, yeah, yeah. And one of the things that White Feathers has often said, and he's emphasised this when we've done public demonstrations, he said, we don't want a blank mind. We want a medium that's got some intelligence, some ability to speak, you know, some understanding. And the way he described it, he said, look, you give us a tin whistle and we'll play a tune on it. You give us a Stradivarius and we'll play a symphony on it. And what he means by that is the better the instrument, the better the medium, the more spiritually evolved and whose consciousness has expanded, and the more their love and intent and purpose is there, you're giving spirit a better instrument to work with. And you don't need to go into this deep trance where they get you out of the way, because you're already halfway there. You're already halfway up the stairs, if you like, and they can meet you halfway more easily and put through you what they need to. So it's good that if you can think and educate yourself and read and develop and meditate, all of these things are good, because it's giving them, a far broader palette to work with when they link with you.
That's beautiful. I love that, the way they can create a symphony when we are tuned in and when we're activating a certain part of ourselves it isn't about money and work and time. And with this link that you have and this relationship that you have with the spirit world, how have you seen it? How have you seen a change over the decades? The message, like, it must be different now because of the times we're in.
Yeah, it is. I mean, two aspects to this, Biba. It's a great question, by the way. I think spiritualism has changed, not always for the best. I think there's more emphasis these days on messages, on entertainment, which winds me up. I won't go into that, but I don't think mediumship is about entertainment. No. But it's been sort of funneled into that sort of bracket, and you've even got to say, this is for entertainment purposes, disclaimer. So I don't like that. And a lot of people go for messages. I know people need comfort and evidence, and I do readings myself online, so I understand how that works. But what comes after that? How many messages do you want? How much proof do you want? How much evidence do you want? You've got to go beyond that and look deeper into that. And that's why I think spiritualism has gone down that route, sadly. However, more recently, through the advent of social media and the internet, I'm finding that there's a sort of they say things go round in circles. I think there's more of a resurgence, in philosophy and with what's going on in the world. People want guidance. They want to know how do we deal with all this that's going on, all this evil that's around us. What does spirit say about this? What does White Feather think? What advice can and they're looking for that now. Certainly, as far as mediums like myself are concerned. So it's almost gone full circle. I mean, I did a trance demonstration two nights ago in Lichfield in England, and we had 50 people there. It was a small little place, spiritualist church, and it was sold out. We had 50 people of all ages, descriptions. We had a wonderful night, and there were so many lovely questions, of all ranging right across the spectrum. And White Feather really comes into his own when he's got an audience, when he can bounce off people, when he can make people laugh, when he can make people think. And it demonstrates how mediumship has to be in the moment. You can't rehearse it. You couldn't rehearse what came through the other night, because we don't know what questions are going to come through. And answering questions is the big strength of White Feather. He's never failed to answer any question in the 45, 50 years that he's worked through me. Never had to say, well, hang on a minute, I'll just go and ask my mates, and just, I'll come back to you in 10 minutes. It's there, And I actually said the other night, even though part of me is not there, there's still a little part of me that's still here, otherwise I wouldn't be functioning. I'd be over there with them. And I said to them, when White Feather's working through me and someone asks a question, the answer is there immediately. In fact, it's so quick. It's quicker than light. It's almost as though the answer's there before the question has been asked. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to put it any other way, but that's a fact. So it's coming back, I think. We and particularly since COVID, venues are starting to open up. We did a lot online during COVID, but venues are starting to open up again. And we're doing, almost picking up where we left off probably 4 years ago.
Do you know what strikes me when you're talking? There's a lady called Caroline Corey. She makes great documentaries, and one of them is called Becoming Superhuman. And she went into this school, and this school teaches kids supernatural abilities. And one of them is they blindfold these kids, and the kids can read with blindfolds on. Yeah, and it's amazing. So they're given a book, and they can read the book because the consciousness is seeing the words, not the eyes. Consciousness is so.
Absolutely.
When you're on the platform, your consciousness and White Feather's consciousness is seeing the question before they've asked, so he already knows the answer.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he often speaks about linear time and non-linear time, and we, at this level, our consciousness is operating through a mind that is conditioned to think in linear terms. The past, the present, and the future. And we're so conditioned to thinking like this that it's almost, unless you are prepared to go beyond it in terms of your understanding, you'll spend your whole life thinking and moving in this linear dimension. When you start to understand that past, present, and future all exist in this present moment of now, and that consciousness is integral to this, then you begin to access information and can be given information from the non-linear, non-physical dimensions. And that information is not restricted, by this level. Now, when it filters through the mind, and I use that term deliberately because our minds put a filter on everything. It can be distorted, it can be changed, it can be, inhibited in some ways. And so we've got to try, if we can, to get beyond this linear mind, beyond the mind, and connect with our infinite essential nature, which is infinite consciousness and awareness. And if we can do that, we're accessing a whole new field or fields of awareness and information. And White Feather has been, focusing on this teaching for a long time now, but more and more recently, because he says we have to raise our consciousness, we have to raise our vibrations. And people look at what's going on in the world and all the control mechanisms and restrictions and, all the wars and everything that's going on, all the evil that's coming out. And his take on it is, well, we can't change that unless we change ourselves. And if we can change ourselves, what appears in our reality in this linear fashion will also change. And he gives a lovely analogy of a mirror. And he said, if you stand in front of a mirror and you don't like what you see, don't blame the mirror. Don't try and change what's in the mirror. Change what you put before the mirror. Change yourself. And this is a big thing for our spirit friend at the moment, you know. He's trying to get man to raise his consciousness individually and collectively.
It's beautiful, and it's happening. It's actually happening. People are talking
It
about
is
this.
it is, yeah. I mean, you're doing a wonderful job, you know, with your podcast and sharing this information, and I'm finding more and more, you know, despite what appears to be on the surface, this narrative, Biba, that we're fed by mainstream media, and this is how the world is, you know, this is how it is. You've got to believe this. That's being questioned and challenged and rejected, and underneath there's this huge movement, this huge sea change. That's a term White Feather used the other night. He said there's a sea change underway where people are waking up. What are they waking up to? They're waking up to their true nature, which has always been there. You know, we've just forgotten it. It's just been veiled by this groundswell of materialism and information that we're bombarded with. If we can just step back from that, you know, and realize what we are, and people are doing this, you know, they're waking up and they're saying, no, we're not going to buy into this anymore. You know, it's been the cause of so much misery in the world for centuries, you know, with history repeating itself. We're not going to have this. There is no little me. There's no little me. We are infinite consciousness. We are the creator, you know. And when we realize that, and it's underway, it's moving, it's on the way. It's a wonderful time to be here.
It's exciting, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know whether you've heard other mediums say this or guides, you know, but
yes, I have. I hear it all the time, and I hear it within myself, and I hear it without myself, and as above and below, and as within, without. It's like swirling all around the place. If you just have eyes to hear and eyes to see, if you go into your inner senses, it's all there. My eyes here they just see. They see what's I put in front of me, so I'm very, very careful not to look at mainstream media ever, because I'll pay not to have ads, because I don't want subliminals going in when I'm waiting to hear a podcast. The subliminals, and I'm very vigilant, and the spirit is teaching me how to be more vigilant of my thoughts at this time, because it's a war on thoughts. Thoughts create reality.
It is.
Like when I woke,
it's a psyop.
It's a psyop. I call it the silent war in the sky. I called it that for 20 years. I didn't even know what it meant, but I said, this is a silent war. It's silent. It's like you can't see it, but you know it and you can feel it. But when you wake up in the morning, we have an option, right? When you wake up, what happens is your system, the program, wants to cling on to the 3D linear, have to do this and have to do this. But if you just for a moment just say, hold on, I'm not even a human being. Just I'm a spirit being having an experience. What's my spirit doing? And you connect. I am connected to divine intelligence and divine love. Then this doesn't run the program. This is just in the background going, check your emails, pay your taxes, you know, stop overeating or whatever the heck is going on, you know. And do you know what I love though? My only desire is to just know more of that which I don't know, and to experience more of that which is becoming familiar to me, which is sharing my existence, sharing my physical body, and not physical body, but my etheric body with the spirit world. I talk to God all the time, the divine intelligence. I talk to spirit guides. I talk to my galactic family, whatever's going on out there. I know it's divine because it's guided me my whole life. And I just say in the morning, I just call in the pillar of light. And the pillar of light encompasses all of that, because otherwise you'd be gone forever reading through that list. And I just say, come and guide me, wake me up even more, show me, lead the way, clear the way of anything that's misperceiving me, any delusions or illusions or anything. And it does it every time. You just have to make a choice.
Well, it always will, because it's your essential nature. It's what you are. I mean, you early on in what you just said, you said about we're all we're all one, we're all the same, and that is so true. And yet, what is society doing? They're trying to divide us. I mean, they're saying now there's 150, 170 genders to begin with. It's absolute nonsense, and it's dividing people up into sexuality, colour, race, belief, you name it. It's all separating people and dividing people up, and we're all the same underneath. There is no race really. There is no gender. We're all infinite spirit, infinite awareness, and if we can fully grasp that simple yet profound knowing and take it on board, life is transformed. It is. We don't need division. We don't need opposites and you believe this and you believe that and I've got all this money, you've got nothing, rich, poor, black, white, ethnic, all of it. It's all nonsense. A whole lot is nonsense.
Yeah, well,
bring it down to the simple knowing of what we are.
Definitely.
That's my view.
No, and I totally agree. And when you see it for what it is, when you see the game, because this is a game, and the game is you are separate from the divine. So you're black, you're white, you're gay, you're straight, you're vaccinated, you're not vaccinated, you're this, you're that, you're talented, you're not, you're male or female, you're whatever. They just keep throwing out a different card. You're Catholic, you're Protestant. I mean, we've had that for years, haven't we, in our realities?
Yeah.
There's not even such a thing.
I mean, no, absolutely. I mean, it made me laugh. I mean, we're recording this today on a sunny day here. I don't know what it's like where you are, but in the UK, it's like a heat wave. We've had a terrible summer.
Yeah, that's true.
And now we're in September. We've got this heat wave, and what do? There's a heat wave health warning in place. I mean, what? I mean, I remember, I don't know about you, as a kid, I mean, there were endless summer days when it hit 30 or 31, and there's a health warning in place. No, there's nothing in place. Who's put what in place? There's nothing being put in place. It's just a phrase that's thrown out there, and the media pick it up, the news readers, and they just repeat it like parrots without thinking about it. There's nothing in place, and there never has been and never will be. It is what it is, Get on with it, see through it.
And there's not even a plate. Show me the plate.
Oh, yes. Don't get me. Yeah, there is no place.
Where's the place?
No, absolutely.
Where's the worry?
Yeah, where's the place? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, people talk about here and there and past and future and present. It's all now, and we can never leave whatever this place is that we're in. We're all in the same place. You might be in Ireland, I'm in the UK, but really that's just a name for a supposed location. We're all in the same place, which is the same consciousness, the same. We might be at different levels of awareness or understanding, but we're all in the same place, in the same moment. There's not even more than one moment. There's only this moment. This is so fundamental. And yet, of course, we're not taught this, are we, at school, because it doesn't fit the program, the agenda.
No,
doesn't fit the program.
Just keep going to school. Don't talk to spirits.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, don't talk to spirits.
Oh, no.
God knows where they're coming from. Like, they could be telling.
Well, they're evil, aren't they?
Oh,
don't talk to evil.
That's why me and you were running around like the Exorcist, going wild on the street. I mean, listen. People are beginning to know that there is. People who are interested in self-development, if you're happy, go for it. Forget all of this. But if you know that within you there's something that can never be satisfied, there's a thirst that can never be quenched, there's a desire and a knowing that there has to be more to this. If that's you, you've got to understand that everything you've been told is a lie. Everything is a lie to keep you separate from the truth. And the truth is you are divine. And divinity wants to move you and move through you and move this place. So this sea and this current that's coming, that is here, can tidal wave over this land where everyone just goes, I am love.
Absolutely.
I am love.
Absolutely.
I am love.
Yeah.
How is that possible? It doesn't matter. You just are. Don't think it, feel it, feel it, feel it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Be it, know it.
Yeah. It has to be a lived experience, not something that you know academically or in the mind. It has to be a lived and shared experience. And the one thing that the system fears most is that we wake up and know what we've always been. We remember what we've always been. The system, the materialistic system, fears that more than anything, because then we cannot be controlled. We cannot be controlled. Ultimately, we can't be controlled or subdued anyway. But the knowing of that, the waking up to that realization, is the most profound thing that will ever happen, or could ever happen, individually and collectively. And that is underway, big time. That is underway. So whether this transformation will take place in our lifetimes, I don't know. But the fact is, we're here for this, whether at the start of it or the middle of it or the end of it, we're here because we are meant to be here. There's no chance, there's no fate, there's no accident, all is as it's meant to be. I've fully believed that. No, I don't believe it. I know it.
Yeah,
I know
exactly.
it,
Yeah, well spotted. So, exactly. It is concession to language as well.
yeah.
That's an old language to believe. There's nothing to believe, you know it. And when you know, like,
Yeah.
I know that my daughter is my daughter. I don't believe it. I don't believe I have a daughter. Like, I know it because she's my daughter. And
Mm.
so this is so exciting. See, when the truth is present, everything in you just goes bing. It's like, yeah, now the filters are off, and anything that wants to be expressed is just present.
Yeah.
Tell me about your own understanding now. With all, you've just been on this path for your entire life. You didn't just come in 10 years ago. Like, it's been there your entire life. And so where are you
Yeah.
now? Where are you personally now with everything?
Personally, I'm in a happier place. Um, I can look back on my life. I can see the way it's unfolded, things that happened that were meant to happen. I can see mistakes that I've made, things that I regret. But I don't sort of dwell on that. I just, none of us are perfect, at this level anyway. And we have to accept that, given what we know now, we'd perhaps do things differently. That's part of life. But I'm in a happier place in that I mean, if we use the E word, enlightenment, there's a lot of myths about that. People think that enlightenment is this sort of wonderful nirvana that you reach and everything is bliss and love and light and happiness. There's nothing can ever, go wrong. It isn't that. Enlightenment is the knowing of yourself, of your true nature. And I find, I'm not saying I'm enlightened, that's not for me to say, but I've reached a point where I find this deep peace and happiness in myself. I don't feel I've got to, I do, still do the white feather thing and I communicate with people, but I don't feel that I've got to change the world or teach anyone anything. I just sort of offer what I know, to people. They can take it or leave it. I feel I'm still part of that information process. But in myself personally, I can reach this point and I can notice when my mind is cutting in. White feather calls it the parrot on the shoulder that, is usually negative and it's got this narrative going on. And I've got the ability now, which we've all got anyway, but I've had to come to the point where I see it in myself, I recognize it, as I also recognize any ego that's there, and I can step back from it, I can shut it down and step back into my true self and this wonderful, deep peace. I can't put it into words. Anything that I said to you to describe it would be a lie because it's beyond language. But it's such a knowing, a deep peace and a deep love, and I'm forever thankful to have reached that point, You know, I don't think I've reached wherever the end is, if there is an end. You know, I think, you know, there's still a lot more that excites me, and there's a lot more I want to discover and a lot more to do. I love doing things and being with people, but I can always step back into this knowing piece, you know. And I think that's I don't know when this sort of crept up on me, or when I became aware of it, but I think I became aware of non-duality a few years ago now, and I was looking at the works of Rupert Spira and Mooji and one or two others, and Alan Watts and people like this, and Adyashanti, and they were all pointing to the same thing. And at first, I sort of rejected it. I thought, well, how can there be no one here? Because non-duality in its purest sense would say there's no one here doing anything, experience anything. And I just didn't get that, because I thought, well, there's me, I'm Rob, you know, I've got a family, I've got a wife, a daughter, and, you know, there's something here. But when you go beyond that, and one day the penny just dropped, and I thought, yeah, this is okay. There's still a Rob, you know, there's still a Biba, there's still the world going on, but I'm not that. I'm just experiencing that in my mind, you know, in my perception. I am the one that is experiencing it. I'm the observer. I'm the one. And when you realize that, all of that falls into perspective, into context, and you realize that you don't have to take it seriously. It's all a play. It's all a drama, you know. It's just an illusion. It's not an illusion in the sense that it doesn't exist. It's very real. The world is very real, you know. If you get a toothache, you know about it, you know. Yeah. But it's not the totality of who and what we are. We are the observer and the experiencer of that, you know. And when you realize that is what you are, your true self, you know, and there isn't even a true self in the individual sense. You are all of it, you know. That to me has been the greatest joy. And sometimes I can just sit and just be, you know, and it's beautiful, you know, beautiful. And I just wish I could parcel that up and package it and give it to everyone, you know. I would do that if I could. But I do try and point people, as does White Feather, because he's very much, you know, the same awareness, understanding. We try and point people in a direction. One thing that really winds me up is when people say, I'm a teacher, you know, and these are my fledglings, these are my pupils, and I've got this qualification and that, and, you know, I'm better than you. You might get a qualification as well one day, but you're not quite there yet, but I've got this knowledge, you know, but I'll share it with you at a cost, you know, I'll share it with you. That drives me mad, you know. I'm just here to point people to what is the truth as I understand it. It's as simple as that, you know. Egotism, I can't. It's one of my pets, you know, annoyances.
But do you know, when you were 17 and you went to Kent and you went into that building and he said to you, "What kind of healing have you done?" That's what you're talking about. It's like,
that's what I'm talking about. But that's what I'm talking about on steroids, because you know, every time you look at Facebook, you know, this person has done this and that and the other, and so you know, and I think no, don't just be humble. I know, just stop,
you know? Because I tell you why, I'm the same. It doesn't bother me anymore, because I do understand what you're saying. I used to see. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I can feel the peace that you're talking about. I can feel what you're talking about, and I know that space too, and I know that I am witnessing this light move through time and space as I perceive it. And when I just allow that to be, people get the assistance that they need through and from me. But when Biba thinks that she's a healer, she's a doctor, she's a nurse, she's a mom, when I start thinking I'm something, then I'm doing it. Yeah. But I don't need to be. Yeah. I can maybe be an artist, and even that's hilarious to me, an artist. I mean, that's just so funny. Everyone's an artist because we're co-creators. We're creating this play. this is the play of life. So everyone's an artist.
Yeah.
I don't take any of that seriously. But like you, I've begun to know there's a reservoir of peace within me. And it's always been there. I'm just now allowing myself to, like you said, sit back and just allow the light to do its thing. And I get to be part of it. I get to witness it. I get to almost like be a glitch. Sometimes I feel like I'm a glitch coming in here just for a moment to witness what this is. And that's my part in this play of life. And I don't want to be anything. I don't want to do anything. I want to do less. I've at a time in my what my son says, what's your plans for the weekends? To do as little as possible. They're like, oh. I'm like, I mean, as little as possible. I just want to be. I want to be in the moment. I want to be there with the people that have presented themselves to me, whether that's clients or family, and just be present. And it's in the presence. When I reside in that peace, they get what they need.
Absolutely. But of course, you see, with most people, the mind will kick in and say, well, you shouldn't be sitting there doing that. You've got stuff to do. You should be, that's what happens with most people. And don't get me wrong. I mean, we've got to live down here,
of course.
And we've got to have these roles to an extent. We've got a job and we've got to put a roof over our head. We've got to put food on the table. We've got families. We've got
and we do.
I get all of that.
And we do.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And I'm not knocking anyone that's, has got a title or a particular role. I'm not knocking anyone for doing that. It's when that becomes more important than the realization of who and what they are and why they're here, when it takes precedence. That's the concern I've got. And when it inflates the ego and it becomes out of all proportion. That's the only thing I'm sort of trying to point out to people, Don't take yourself so seriously, in terms of identity and the mind. Don't take yourself so seriously.
No, because it's not.
Because it's transient. It will pass. It will pass. It will come and go. It will pass.
What I did for the laugh, I said to my daughter, get a pen and paper. I'm going to list all of my things. I want to see what I am. What am I? Well, I can do this. I said, oh, add this. I thought, imagine I actually put that up on social media. I feel like a narcissist.
Yes.
Right?
Good word.
Like I feel
Good
like
word, yeah.
so my understanding is this, right, Rob, that sometimes I was explaining to my daughter, she goes, why do women display themselves? It's like, are they all just about like wanting to have sex with loads of guys? Like, why do women go on their bikinis on Instagram and they're like my age? And I said, no, there's two types. There's one reason. One time a person can display themselves because they need validation for their existence through the attention of others because they don't know themselves. So a woman, this is just an example, will seek sexual attention. Now there's nothing in her that will be with that person. She just likes the attention, the likes, the comments. That validates her as a woman. It's negative sexual attention. Unfortunately, she has to take her clothes off. But then there's women who are actually like do that and they're looking for partners. And it's the same. It's the same in the business aspect and how people advertise themselves. Some people want to go, wow, you've done this. Like you've written a ton of books. You haven't even mentioned that.
Yeah.
How many books have you written?
10, I think. 10.
A lot of books.
10, yeah. But I mean, I get entirely the point that you're making, and the thing with likes and validation, they found that there's a link between someone liking a Facebook post and a change in brain chemistry, because when the brain see, oh yes, somebody's, I've got 50 people that likes this, it releases endorphins in the brain. And it gives a temporary high. They've found a correlation between this, likes on Facebook and other media, Twitter and all that, with a change in body chemistry. So it becomes a drug, and people aren't even aware of it. And they unconsciously, you become conditioned to wanting this high, whether you know it or not. And also the other thing as well, while we're talking about social media as well, is that I think attention span is lessened because people want a quick fix almost. If you don't get it in the first sort of 5 seconds, you scroll down to the next post and the next one, and we're developing a legion of a generation of scrollers, and this almost feeds back into what we were saying earlier when you asked me about, the changes that I've noticed over time. And, that's why it's so lovely when we get a dedicated audience that want to come and listen to White Feather, and we have to point this out. And I always say to people, look, when you're selling tickets or whatever for this, or you're inviting people, make sure they know it's not a message giving evening. It's a for the deeper thinker. And when we get 50 or 60 people there that want to be there, I know we're going to have a good night, and I know that the guides won't disappoint, and that's always been the case, always been the case. I'll just quickly share this. We did one at a well-known spiritualist church not far from where I live. I won't mention the name of it. And it was a trance evening. And it's a big church, It was a high-profile thing for me. And there was a busload of people turned up just before the start, right? And they came in and they sat, not together, they were sort of scattered around. And we started the trance, and White Feather was talking, and I can hear, because he uses my ears, when I'm in trance. I could hear this shuffling, and I was aware that people were getting up and people were walking out. Now, I later found out that they thought it was a message, an evening of clairvoyance. They weren't told beforehand. The doors weren't locked, which they should be for a trance evening. They should lock the doors. And we started with about, I don't know how many, say 40, 50 people. And by the time I came out of trance, there was about 25 people. And half of these had left, And I had to say something afterwards to the committee, and I say, look, this is not good enough. You must explain to people what they're going to see. Now, nothing wrong with messages. As I said earlier, it's evidence, and people who need it, But I don't know. I think maybe this whole thing about lack of attention and quick fix and quick bump and entertainment, it's all, it's out there, So I think, going back to what we were saying earlier, this sort of knowingness and this information and this understanding, it does require a certain level of, and I'm not being judgmental in the slightest here with anybody, it does require a certain level of awareness and desire to know more than, just messages or just that particular level. There are people that need that. I fully appreciate that and understand that, and I give evidence to people as well. But there's this other side as well that's vitally important, and it's about balance. It's about understanding the need for both, I think. Yeah. But where churches and centres don't point this out beforehand, I think that's
it's not fair.
They're failing, really. It's not fair.
It's not fair on either party, on you or them, because they're on another timeline. They're not where you are. They're nowhere near where you are. They're just like, where's my granny? How is she getting on? Yeah. And what am I doing next year? And that's their timeline. They just need a quick fix. That's it. Yeah. And that's perfect, because that's their reality. Well, you're on another reality, and you're like, hold on. Yeah. I'm going to tell you about the journey of your soul if you just give me an hour. And
that's right.
I know that we live in different realities. And so my work, and it's not my work, but how I work is, and my understanding is, whatever frequency I'm tuning into, with that, the resonance of that will be returned to me. So the people I engage with, like you, we're resonance. There's a harmonics between us. Yes. And the more of us that just allow that just to be the way it is. I'm a deeper person, as in, like, I'm a deeper thinker. Messages don't really interest me. Now, that's a terrible thing to say. I get messages.
No, I totally.
I'm just like, okay, that's lovely. And it's always lovely, but I don't want a message. I don't need a message. I feel in me. I just want to go deeper and deeper and more out to where we've never gone before. And,
absolutely,
like, come on. Like I work with a lovely man called Andrei Djordjevic. He's a trance medium and he teaches in a lovely way. And he said, like you, he said, all these filters, it's like we're entertaining the filters. There's an endless universe waiting to communicate with us. We got to get past the message.
Yeah.
You have to get past the message.
Yeah.
That's why I picked him as a teacher, because I'm like, that's exactly where my resonance is at. I know there's infinite potential and we need it right now, because we are holding, I believe, a grid for the people who are just, they're like walking on eggshells. They're tiptoeing in and out and in and out. And that's just where they're at energetically. But for us that can maintain a deeper reservoir of truth, they will eventually look into that. They'll eventually start looking, as we all did. And can you help me and others understand your interpretation of meditation, trance, and just downloads? Like, is there like a difference, or tell me?
Okay, so meditation, I mean, in the conventional sense, you can meditate purely for relaxation, for just calming the mind, healing the body, going into the self, and just being, and that's one type of meditation. There's another type of meditation which is more of an active meditation, in that you're looking to connect with spirit. You're not looking to connect with your guides and a higher intelligence, and in that sense you don't sort of go deep, into sort of deep relaxation. You're almost in like a heightened state of meditation. In fact, there's actually been evidence to show that brainwave activity goes into like, is it the alpha or beta? It goes into a higher frequency when you're doing trance than if you're just meditating, where it goes, into the theta and the deeper trance, the deeper states of relaxation. So there's a difference between that kind of meditation and the meditation where you're looking to be used as an instrument, As to downloads, that can happen anytime. You don't have to be in a meditative state. As I said earlier, you could be driving a car, gardening, washing up, and your mind's just almost in that sort of in-between state where you're almost sort of you're doing what needs to be done, but you're almost sort of daydreaming, and it just pops into your mind. And Whitefeather often says, he quotes Archimedes, who, when he sat in the bath of water and the water overflowed, and he said, "Eureka, I've got it." He'd been trying to work out mathematically why a certain amount of water overflowed when his body was in the water. He couldn't get it. And then suddenly it was a download. It poured into his mind from outside of his mind, from his higher consciousness. Oh, and he got it. And very often this happens, it's the whole thing. I've had information pop into my mind at the oddest time, and it's the whole thing. It's not linear, it's non-linear, it's the whole thing. I can then go back and think about it and think about it in a linear way and work it out. I can see what I get that now. But it's just like it's like somebody's just dropped a pebble in your pool, and it just radiates out, within your consciousness, and the whole thing is there. So there's different ways that, we can meditate and relax and work actively, and there's different ways that spirit can connect with us. They use various means. As is not to reason why necessarily. They will do what they need to do, and they're masters at taking the opportunity, to seize the moment, if you like.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it anyway.
And do you, for people who are interested, like, do you teach, like, what do you offer? What's your services?
Okay, well, apart from working publicly, doing demonstrations, occasionally I've sort of stepped back from doing normal spiritualist services, but I still do a few local ones. But I've done that for 45 years,
Wow.
and I felt the need to sort of have a change. Online, I do readings 1-to-1. We offer Whitefeather groups of up to 6 people. And I also do 1-to-1 teaching. I do courses of 6 sessions, like an introductory course and then an advanced course to help people develop trance. So if anybody wants to look at the website, there's a lot of stuff on there about what I offer. And of course there's the books as well, which are all available on Amazon and Amazon download, for Kindle. The website is whitefeatherspirit.com. And people can see, a lot of things. I update it regularly, at least a couple of times a week. So there's always something going on.
That's good.
And occasionally we do an online trance, we may have as many as 30 people online from all over the world. We just do those periodically.
That's really, really good. So you do teach.
Yeah.
So you do teach. If someone wanted to teach, they could contact you if they wanted to learn.
Absolutely. I always say to people, I remember Gordon Higginson saying to me years ago, you can't make someone a medium, but what you can help to do is to bring out what's already there. If somebody approaches me and says, I want to become a trance medium, I'll say, well, okay, let's see what potential there is. And if I can work with that and give you some tips and help to bring that out, I'm happy to do that. But I can't make you a trance medium, I'm always looking for, it's got to be a 50-50, I'll give you what I know, but you've got to come to the party as well, and you've got to have the intent and the desire. I don't want time wasters. I'm happy to work with people, and I work with people from the States, from the UK, from Ireland, from Australia, all over the place.
That's so good.
People are people.
No, I love the fact you don't say, yeah, sure, we can do that. Like, they're realistic expectations.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
That's part
You've
of it.
You've got to be realistic,
Yeah, you do.
I don't make, I don't make promises that I can't keep, But if I see potential in someone, I'm happy to help them and help Spirit to bring that out,
Yeah.
It's a privilege, really. It's a privilege.
That's wonderful that you do that, and you do one-to-one teaching. Is that what you said?
Do one-to-one,
Wow.
yeah. Do one-to-one, yeah. Or if there were a group of people, we can tailor it really, But I've had some great people I've worked with over the last 2 or 3 years. I sort of started scaling this up really during COVID, as a lot of people did, did a lot of stuff online, and it's just carried on from there really. But I take great pleasure in sharing information with people, It's what I'm about, really.
Yeah, and also with just going back to what we were saying about messages. See, there's 2 different types of messages. There's messages about people can ask the same questions, but then there's messages about your own personal development and your own personal soul's journey. Those messages are so important because those messages are what got you started when someone said you are a medium. You are like their personal development. Like those are the messages we really, really need. They're the questions you really need to be asking. Like, tell me about my path and what can you tell me about what might suit my type of temperament? Yeah. Am I open? Am I susceptible to hearing the spirit? And if not, why? Is there anything I can do? Those are the type of questions I think I'm a quantum healer, as in like I do quantum healing hypnosis with people and they get to talk to their higher self. And I say, your questions determine what comes. Your questions are going to determine what you're going to hear. So go very deep, meditate and say to your higher self, what questions do I need to ask right now? Don't push all the surface questions to the side just for a moment, because I'm sure they're valid. But just for a moment, go very deep and ask the questions like, why am I here? What am I doing here?
Yeah.
Why is there so much noise in my head? Or why, those kind of questions I find the ones that change your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you, I'm a qualified hypnotherapist. So I use some of that.
I did not know.
No, well, I don't tell everybody. And I've got letters after my name that I never put anywhere. It doesn't matter. They're just letters. It's just an accreditation. But I use the knowledge that I did gain on that course in with the teaching, because it's wonderful. Hypnotherapy and hypnotism and mediumship are so aligned, in many ways. You can use so much from each, to get a point across. But I find with a lot of people, it's as well as giving them information and sharing personal experiences, it's almost as well about diffusing worries that they've got about their own development, which is, I always say to people, don't hold negative thoughts about your development. A lot of people question, and they're very, very sincere, very well-meaning, which is great. It's what I'm looking for. But they often, like the guy who sat in the circle and the little girl spoke through him, they're worrying if it's their own mind. It's the mind kicks in. Is this my own mind doing this? Am I making this up? Whether it's clairvoyance or trance, and to get over that barrier alone is a big thing, and yet it's an easy thing
Massive.
to do. But once you can do it, once you can get over that, then it really starts to kick in, I think it's not a bad thing for people to sort of question themselves. We should all question ourselves, as long as it doesn't get to the point where it becomes a block, and people are so full of self-doubt. They want to do the best and the highest thing, but am I making it up? Is it my? And I say, no, just go with it. Just go with the flow. Don't worry about who that's the other thing. Who's the name of my guide? What's the name? I say, look, don't worry about guides. Don't worry. Just focus on what's coming through, what you feel inspired to speak of, and the philosophy and the information. Make that your focus. Don't worry about all these feelings that you're getting, the pressure there in the third eye, or the increased heartbeat, or your head feels expanded, or you can't open your eyes. These are all natural things, part of trance. Don't focus on it. Just acknowledge it. Let it go. And people seem to relax when you tell them that. I thought I had to focus. I thought I had to know the name of my guide and connect with and attune. I said, look, just attune with spirit. Don't worry. That they'll tell you who they are when they're ready. They're in control, really. But people tend to relax then a bit, and I find once they've got over that little barrier, that little hump, then it becomes easier,
I relax in your wisdom.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, Biba,
it's your wisdom.
It's experience, it's experience. And I love people. I love working with you and other people and connecting with you. And one of the things I was going to say to you is, you and I have only just met today, right?
Yeah, like an hour and a half ago.
An hour and a half ago, yeah. Now, I know that you're feeling what I'm feeling because there's a knowingness between us. There's a resonance, almost like a recognition of people who are on the same frequency. And how often do you find that in life where you meet someone for the first time and you feel comfortable with them because from the heart you feel you're on the same vibration, the same energy, It's not a mind thing, it's not a mental thing, it's an energetic thing, And equally the opposite, you meet someone and there's a repulsion there, they can be the best looking man or woman, on the planet, but there's something that you don't like about them, something that jumps out at you because you don't resonate with them for whatever reason. They're on a different pathway, a different frequency. And I go very much on that, very much on that feeling thing because it's never let me down. Call it a gut feeling, intuition, if you like.
I'm the same. Isn't it lovely to know that and to have that? And we have the ability to, yes, communicate with the spirit world. I'm only beginning, nothing like where you are, but I understand also that comes into this linear space and time that I get to just know things. You just know things and you can sense things. And if I put out a YouTube, always re-emphasize in a YouTube video that don't work with me if I don't resonate with you. Don't call me.
Yeah.
Find someone that makes you feel nice when you hear them. That's Absolutely. The resonance. It feels nice. It's not about looking good, qualifications. It's not about your branding, your expertise and making it all look beautiful. It's about, do you feel nice when that person talks?
Yeah. Totally agree.
That's it.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely talking to you. Just so lovely talking to you. And And if people want to hear your messages with White Feather, they're on YouTube, right?
They're on YouTube. There's several videos on the website of taken from live public demonstrations. My good friend James McQuitty, you may have heard of, I don't know. He lives on the Isle of Wight. He's an author, and he's also got a website where he posts a lot of videos of White Feather and other mediums as well. I think his YouTube site is James the Author. I think it's James the Author. But if you put a search in for James McQuitty, it'll come up with. He's also on BitChute as well as YouTube, because YouTube won't show everything. They'll deplatform you, so he's gone onto BitChute as well. And he's also got a great book that features a lot of White Feather philosophy and other mediums as well. It's just come out called The Great Awakening. So I would highly recommend that as well. But yeah, there's a lot of, I've got a YouTube page, which I don't update it very often. I'm guilty of that. So if you just put in Robert Goodwin White Feather, there's videos on there. There's also a lovely lady in America, who's done a lot of work with trance mediums, and whose name escapes. I'm not doing very well with names this morning.
You make a terrible medium.
I would make a terrible medium, yeah. It's my age, it's my age. I'm terrible with names. Kathy Beltran. There you go. Kathy Beltran.
Well done.
Thank you.
Kathy Beltran.
Kathy Beltran. And she's done interviews with must be 50 different trance mediums. And I've done 2 with her. But there's a lot of mediums as well on trance medium. So if you're interested in trance, that's worth looking at as well.
I'll put all your links in the description so people will be able to find you and learn more about White Feather. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your stuff with us. It's beautiful to meet you and to meet a like-minded soul as well. Personally, for me, that always just makes this journey more enjoyable.
You too, Biba. It's been wonderful connecting with you. I feel like I've known you all my life, really. You've got that lovely energy about you. It's been absolute delight, and thank you for your questions and your intelligence, your spiritual intelligence, and for sharing this conversation with me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, God bless, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
God
you.
bless.
Thank you.
God bless.